What I wanted to start out with today is basically just some kind of fun, some fun stuff. I went to my daughter. She is about 12 years old, and she basically is an aspiring artist, and she loves to kind of like draw and write and stuff like this. Well, anyway, we went to this special little convention for these young artists, and there was an author there. His name was Brandon Mull, M-U-L-L, and he's actually the author of Fablehaven, Candy Shop Wars, Beyonders, some of these awesome fantasy books. And anyway, he was giving a presentation, and what I wanted to do to start out this morning was kind of like give you a little bit of a taste of Adilas, but at the same point kind of like relate it to what Brandon was relating with his fantasy books. Anyway, he started his presentation and he talked about world building. And what I wanted to do is just kind of show you just a little bit about the world that we're building inside of Adilas. And so in a fantasy world, usually you have to have a portal, some way to get into this fantasy world, whether it's a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, they go through the wardrobe, or you go through a pond, or a this or that. Like sometimes there's like these hidden worlds, but you have to go through this portal. So the portal into Adilas is your login and password. And virtually what we do is we actually think almost like on a data sphere level. And if I was kind of explaining this, what I'd like to do is just kind of show you this small little graphic here. This is just a cross section of it, but if you imagine a sphere, this round globe, this is this world that we're entering, this Adilas world. And what it is it basically in the middle is your hub. This is what we call your classic homepage or your jump-off spot. And from there, the next level out is basically your next sub-levels of the home pages. And so inside of our world, in this data sphere where things are just flying and going in different tracks and orbs, what happens is basically you're at the core, and then you can go out to the next level. And say, for instance, a next level out might be an invoice homepage, a PO homepage, a customer homepage, a vendor homepage, whatever. We have about 12 to 20. And depending on how you're using the system, depends kind of how we want to wrap that next layer out. Beyond that, so what I'm doing, if I was going to show you, I'm going to use my little marker pen right here. So basically, if we start in the middle of the hub, everybody starts in the middle. As soon as you go out to the next level, you can see how individually there's tons of little sub home pages. And what happens is a lot of things end up residing on those layers, whether it's expense receipts, whether it's your inventory, whether it's your invoices, whatever. So that's kind of the next little level out. Well, once you start playing into that level, you get into tools and reports and features. So there might be a number of different things stacked inside of this next little level out. And so it's kind of a cool little way of thinking of it. So you got your advanced searches, your basic searches, any special reports, exports to Excel. These are all kind of this next level of beyond the home page. Then the biggest level, way out wander, and of course I kind of had to draw this so I can encapsulate it, but this potentially could expand for forever and ever and ever. You start getting into the little itsy bitsy pieces of data, just tons and tons of pieces of data all around that are actually related to that type of a deal. And so hopefully that kind of gives you just a little idea of how the Adilas world is created. We basically, anywhere you come in, you come through the portal, and once you're into this data globe and sphere, you're in the middle. Depending on what you want to do, you jump to the next little home page out, which is basically like the next level out. And then you go to the next level and the next level, which finally you get to your data. The other cool thing is we have to draw this thing as flat, but literally it's almost this space where you're having interconnectivity and different things that are playing, and it's kind of fun. Hopefully you can kind of see how we could almost call it like almost like a fantasy or a world building. It's kind of fun. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to just kind of clear some of these drawings right now, and we are going to get started this morning. One other thing that was really interesting about this artist that was kind of talking about these fantasy worlds is one of the things that he was talking about is you have to have characters. So he's talking about stories. You have to have characters. Well, inside of Adilas, there's a number of things that we call players. What I'm going to do right now is just kind of show you a small list of some of the players inside of Adilas. These are virtually kind of like the characters. So I'm going to click on Help. Any help file actually has a link to the thing we call Steps to Success. If you click on this, this will eventually end up being our user guide. If you click on it, you come down, Section 4 says meet the players, and I haven't gotten this far yet, but I wanted to kind of show you where it's at. Let me jump in here, and then I'll jump actually to the next page, which shows it in a little bit better. Well, I guess it's long enough I'm going to have to scroll no matter what. So basically, we have all of these different players. You have departments, you have interfaces, you have history, reports, orders, parts, payroll, permissions, quick searches, all this kind of stuff. These are some of what we call our main players inside of the thing. So if you think of it almost like a game, these are your characters. And then what happened is the next part that Brandon was talking about as fantasy world is characters have to have relationships, okay? So relationships meaning like Tom and Sally, they're really good friends and they work really good together, and eventually they get in trouble and they pull together and eventually they make it through. So what we do inside of Adilas is we create relationships as well. Like, I thought it was very interesting because I'm seeing tons and tons of these little scenarios that were kind of fun. And so imagine something like this. You have an invoice. I'm going to jump back real quick to the main homepage just to kind of show you some stuff. So an invoice through the shopping cart is tied to customers. So that almost creates like this cool relationship. And if they don't pay for the whole invoice, it creates over here an AR, which is an accounts receivable. And so it's kind of cool how these relationships start to design and develop and do different things. The next piece to this puzzle that Brandon was explaining that I thought was really cool is once you have characters and relationships, the next part of a big story, especially sci-fi or fantasy, is trouble, problems. Okay? Usually they have something they have to overcome or something that's plaguing them. Well, what we have is we actually have this game called business. Okay? So I'm going to kind of like point to this little map of a game of golf. So our trouble is that we know that we want to start from here and we want to get to here, but how we do it, there's tons of variables. And just like the game of golf, there's sand traps, there's roughs, there's trees, there's gullies, there's lakes, there's all sorts of stuff. And so what we're trying to do is help people to run their business in this data sphere where everything is kind of interconnected. So kind of just a fun little analogy. I'm going to switch back for a second. So basically there's 5 of these things that I'm going to try to tell you, and then we will move on. But basically we have characters, we have relationships, we have trouble or problems, and then all of a sudden it starts getting into choices and accountability or cause and effect relationships. So as you do something, you make a decision, eventually it actually creates an effect. And so all of these key 5 pieces that create fantasy and sci-fi novels, we actually have inside of the Adilas world. A cause and effect, if we're dealing with invoices, as soon as I get money from an invoice, it technically is available, and so then I can take it and I can run it over here to deposits, which ends up hitting the bank, which ends up making my balance sheet look like it's bigger. Does that make sense, how it's kind of a cause and effect relationship? And so I thought it was very interesting, and I'll give him great credit. I took a whole page of notes going to this little seminar with my daughter, and it was for her, and she was listening probably on one level, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing ever. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop about the fantasy stuff, and we will go ahead with the next little piece of the puzzle.